Go, Fritz.
The Bears are who we thought they were.
The Bears. The Bears.
I am the great Cornholio.
We'll see what happens.
Playoffs?
See, Sean McDonough, Jay Billis. Goats!
Can you play a song? Something cool. Put my mic on!
I'm calling both games.
Goes down the field for Smith. Oh, he got it!
Seattle. We're getting ready for Cincinnati.
This segment, I want to talk about something I saw this morning. And, the Big 12 has extended invitations to a few teams out there. Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati. Now, if all of those teams were going to go to the Big 12, I think actually that would make it truly the Big 12, right? Because right now things are kind of confusing. So the Pac-12 I think actually does have 12 teams. The Big 10 has 14 teams, and the Big 12 has 10 teams. If Texas and Oklahoma are gone in 2025, so that would bring them down to 8. But if Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati all go to the Big 12, that would truly make it the Big 12 for the first time in a while, I think. But there's kind of an issue with that. If Houston, BYU, and if all those teams go to the Big 12, the big issue is that the three out of those 4 teams are in the American Athletic Conference, and I'm not saying, oh my God, you got to preserve the American Conference. I'm not saying that by any means, but it is there is gonna be kind of a alignment shift from the American Athletic, right? BYU is in the Mountain West, I believe, or is BYU independent? Actually, they might be independent. I'm not exactly sure. But the American Athletic's gonna have a little bit of a shift if those 3 teams were to go to the Big 12. And for me, at least, anyway, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati are the 3 teams from the American Athletic that, for me at least, were always going to be the teams that were going to get the invitation to the Big 12 if the Big 12 stays alive. Now, the big issue, there's a few issues here. The realignment, which I'm going to get to in a second. But the other issue is that all 4 of those teams right now are not considered Power 5 teams. And if all of a sudden they go to the Big 12, now they're considered a Power 5 team. And, we always hear about the value of being a Power 5 team, specifically for college football, right? For basketball, it doesn't matter too much. But for college football, right, when they're looking at your resume for the playoff, they're looking at how did you fare against Power 5 teams, and how did you fare against the best group of 5 teams, right? The group of 5 teams are like, the top 5 conferences that aren't the Power 5. And, all of a sudden now Cincinnati, right, if they become a Power 5 team, right, and I understand that the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are kind of the weaker of the Power 5 conferences. And, Oklahoma, like they dominate. If Oklahoma dominates the Big 12 slate, that isn't valued as much as if Alabama dominates the SEC slate, right? If Oklahoma in 2025 dominates the SEC slate, then that will have more value than when they go undefeated in the Big 12. For obvious reasons, the SEC is tougher than the Big 12, more competition. So, I think when you look at a team, and all of a sudden, right, Texas and Oklahoma have been the front runners for the Big 12 in the past 10 years, right? Iowa State is up and coming. West Virginia has been up there a few seasons. I don't think they're going to be up there this season. But right now it's really between Oklahoma and Iowa State this season, right? So Iowa State is going to kind of take place of Oklahoma as the Big 12 team that kind of dominates, I think, if Iowa State continues to do what they've been doing in the Big 12. And so when you look at Iowa State, right, you look at what they do in the Big 12, and that matters, right? Obviously, your conference record matters. It matters if you win your conference championship, so on and so forth. However, right, the Big 12 is already a low kind of a not I don't want to say low stakes, but it was already a not super valued. It was already a low valued conference right? Now if you take 4 Group of 5 teams and all of a sudden make them a Power 5 team, the Big 12 almost kind of becomes a Group of 5 conference rather than a Power 5 conference. And, you know, I think that it is very important that you know, I think that if Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati go to the Big 12 and they're all of a sudden considered a Power 5 team, right, where these teams are right now, it is not Power 5, not Power 5 status. They need to improve. And I know Cincinnati's like a top 10 team or whatever, but that's a top 10 team, given that they are expected to dominate the American Athletic Conference. How are they going to fare in the Big 12? Who knows, right? The competition, right? We say that the Big 12 competition is not that high. It's not very competitive for teams that dominate, right? For the Oklahomas and the Texas and Iowa State. There's not a lot of competition for those teams right now in the Big 12, because the Big 12 is, you got 3 or 4 teams that are going to dominate, and then you've got the rest of the conference that is not very good at all, right? I mean, Kansas, when's the last time Kansas has been good at football? They're absolutely atrocious. I mean, we got a Group of 5 teams that are I mean, they're playing Coastal Carolina this week, and Coastal Carolina is like 26-point favorites. When's the last time that has happened? So all of a sudden now, you know, Cincinnati is pretty much expected to dominate the American Athletic Conference. You know, maybe Houston gives them a little bit of a fight, and maybe Memphis, right? Because Memphis has been really good in that conference in recent years. But for Cincinnati, right now they're expected to dominate the American Athletic Conference, right? No matter how good the other teams do, right? They're definitely the front runners for that conference to win the conference. But take Cincinnati, put them in the Big 12, and all of a sudden maybe they're not expected to dominate like they were in the American Athletic Conference. And you know, now you look at Iowa State, and Iowa State Cincinnati is a compelling matchup. But taking Cincinnati, and you're saying, oh man, well they dominated in the American Athletic Conference. Yes, but that doesn't mean too much when you take that and you put them against a Power 5 team, right? And in recent years, when UCF was very dominant in the American Athletic Conference, you know, and they were making their case to get in the college football playoff, right? I mean, we've seen a few teams in the Power 5, in the Group of 5 rather, make their case for why they should be in the playoff, right? We had, you know, Western Michigan a few years ago was saying, hey, we should be top 10 teams. You had UCF in recent years, and now you've got Cincinnati up there as well. When looking at those teams, a really valued stat is how you fared against Power 5 teams. Take Cincinnati, put them in the Big 12, all of a sudden how they fare against Power 5 teams isn't super valued anymore, because now they are a Power 5 team. So now they're expected to do well against Power 5 teams. It's not oh wow, you kept it close, or you beat Georgia. Oh wow, you kept it really close, or you beat Clemson, right? And you're a Group of 5 team. That means a lot. All of a sudden now, right, beating Clemson is still big. Don't get me wrong, but as a Power 5 team, if you're going to make the playoff as a Power 5 team, you're expected to have big wins, right? It's a requirement. You got to have big wins against other top 10 Power 5 teams. And if you don't, you're not all of a sudden as valued, right? So I think Cincinnati being in the top 10 is right now, at least, it's saying to me, oh, they're gonna give Power 5 teams a good shot. They're gonna beat some Power 5 teams, and I understand that not every Power 5 team is good. I understand there's some real garbage cans out there, but like top 25, right, top 30 Power 5 teams, Cincinnati's gonna give them a good fight. That's what's expected of them as a top 10 team. Whereas And part of that is because, oh, wow, you're in the American Athletic Conference, you're top 10. You know, you can't take them lightly. They're going to be a tough team to play. Whereas if they are a Power 5 team, all of a sudden you're saying, okay, now it's not so much, oh, wow, they're going to give them a good fight. It's you're expected to beat them now if you're going to be a top 10 team. And that's just how it is. That's the difference between being a big, I almost got a big 5. That's the difference between being a Power 5 team and being a Group of 5 team. A Group of 5 team in the top 25 is, wow, you're going to give some other Power 5 conference teams, top 25, some really good teams, you're going to give them a fight or you're going to beat them. Power 5 team in the top 25, you're gonna pretty much give everybody a good fight. You're going to beat most other teams. And for the Big 12, right, the Big 12 is already kind of a low-valued conference in terms of, oh, wow, you beat a Big 12 team, that doesn't mean anything. Right, the Big 12 is known for high-scoring games with no defense. So the Big 12 is already kind of not taken as seriously as the other Power 5 conferences. Pac-12 as well, but not, Pac-12 is on similar ground as the Big 12. Now you take a bunch of teams that weren't even considered Power 5 teams, put them in a Power 5 conference, and all of a sudden the Big 12 is almost like a joke. The Big 12 is almost like I said, it's almost a joke at this point. And I'm not saying that Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and UCF, I'm not saying that those teams are a joke. I'm not saying you look at those teams and saying, oh my God, they don't have what it takes to be a Power 5 team. I'm not saying that by any means. But what I am saying is you take 4 Group of 5 teams, put them into an already devalued big Power 5 conference. You put them in a conference that's already not taken too seriously, and now the Big 12 is on the brink of not even really being considered a Power 5 conference. The Big 12 is, and I think the Big 12 has a big decision to make. Do you take the risk of seriously hindering your competition, seriously hindering how serious other people take you as a conference by inviting these teams that weren't considered a Power 5 team before into your conference? Do you take that risk, or do you just call it a quits, cut your losses, and break away, right? Because if for example, the Pac-12 takes some teams from the Big 12, perhaps TCU, Oklahoma State maybe, and Oklahoma State they could go either way. Maybe they could go to the SEC if things like that happen. Do you kind of cut your losses and say, okay, this just isn't going to work for us, and the conference dissolves? Is that a winning strategy? Is that a good thing to do? I really don't know. But what I do know is that if you take all of these teams that were not taken as Power 5 teams last year, right, and now all of a sudden you're saying, okay, these are Power 5 teams, because being a Power 5 team is not taken lightly when being considered for the college football playoff. So you can't just invite anybody to be in a Power 5 team, right? You're not going to see the Big 10 invite Towson State into the Big 10. You're not going to see the ACC invite Coastal Carolina into the ACC. You're not going to see the SEC invite Jacksonville State, right? You're not going to see the Pac-12 invite San Jose State. Why? Because these things are taken seriously. These conferences want to have good competition. These conferences want to have, again, good competition, because if you have strong teams, you want that representation. For college football, at least, you want that representation in the college football playoff and those New Year's Six bowls, right? And for the Big 12, you take in prior years, you took UCF and you matched them up against a Big 12 team in a New Year's Six bowl, and it's like, okay, UCF really should beat this team because the Big 12 is a joke. I mean, we already have people saying the Big 12 is a joke, and I mean, you just go and invite anybody in your conference. And I'm not saying that, and again, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Houston, UCF, and these teams, I'm not saying that these are just nobodies. I'm not saying that these are just trash teams that you're just letting in your conference. But the Big 12 is already not really taken as seriously as maybe they should be. And now you just invite these teams that aren't Power 5 teams into your conference. and it kind of gives your conference that notion, not the notion, but you kind of give that you come off as that conference that's, oh, you want to be a Power 5 team, here is your gateway into doing that. Here is your path into being a Power 5 team. And now any team's gonna be like, oh, I want to go to the Big 12, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that, maybe that attracts teams into being in their conference. Maybe that gets them more teams, but I don't know that will go over well with the College Football Playoff Committee, other college football commentators and stuff like that. I don't know that is going to go over so well with other conferences, right? Because now other conferences can say, okay, the Big 12 really isn't. We don't value them as an opponent, right? The teams schedule non-conference games against other big schools, right? Like Miami in the ACC, for example, schedules a game against Alabama, and that's a big game for them. Miami's not going to say, oh my God, you know who we really need to play? We really need to play Houston. We got to get BYU on the schedule. I don't think they're saying that. And right, and just for another example, Maryland played Texas in a home series a few years ago. That's a big game for them. That's a big game for Maryland, as they're trying to elevate their football program into being a Big Ten football program. Ohio State looks at teams like Oregon and saying, we really got to get Oregon on the schedule. Georgia looks at Clemson and says, that would be a really big game for us if we can get Clemson on the schedule. Nobody's looking at Cincinnati or BYU as an SEC, ACC, or Big Ten team and saying, we got to get Cincinnati on the schedule. We get BYU on the phone right now because we got to get them on the schedule. I don't care what it takes. We got to get a home-and-home series with BYU. I don't see many people saying that unless you're a rival like Utah, right? Utah saying we got to get BYU on the schedule because that's a big rivalry for them. You're not going to see, you're not going to see Ohio State. You're not going to see Alabama saying, oh, we got to get BYU on the schedule, whether they're a Big 12 team or not, because they're just not as valued and not taken as seriously as being that Power 5 team, right? Even if they are in the Big 12, I think they're still not going to be, taken super seriously. And again, the Big 12 goes from not being taken too seriously already as it is to being almost an absolute joke at this point if they just let all these teams in. So, I don't think the Big 12, I think the Big 12 has to take a step back and say, do we really just want to invite all these teams into our conference to get more teams in to replace what we've lost? Right? Because not by any mean, right? You're going to have a tough time replacing Oklahoma and Texas. You're going to have trouble replacing them anyway. But Houston and BYU and Cincinnati are not, is that the best that they can do? Maybe. But if that's the best you can do, I really think you got to take a look and say, okay, do we really want to invite all these teams into our conference, or do we want to just cut our losses and dissolve? I don't know right now. I think that if those teams do go to the Big 12, I think they're going to have to seriously elevate their programs, because as it is right now, there's a reason why those teams aren't in a Power 5 conference. There's a reason for that. It's not just because, there's no room, right? You can always make room. I mean, we just saw the SEC they have 14 teams. They said, bring 2 more in, pick them up, right? So there's always room. There's always room, right? The ACC has been trying for the past, 5-10 years to get Notre Dame to be a full member, right? Not just for basketball, but for football too. They've been tirelessly trying to get Notre Dame into the ACC. So there's always room, right? It's not just, we don't have room for you. But if Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU are gonna go to the Big 12, they've got to elevate their programs from what they are now into being a Power 5 program. Because as it is right now, if you just invite them in, it's like, okay, that just devalues. That will devalue an already devalued conference. The Big 12 is not a conference you look at and say, oh my God, we got to go to the Big 12, right? There's a reason why Colorado has left, why Nebraska has left, why Texas A&M has left, why Missouri has left, why Texas and Oklahoma have left, because it's not the value of the Big 12 has been going down. It has been going down the tubes over the past 10, 15 years. That's why everybody's leaving. Nobody's saying, oh my God, we got to go to the Big 12.